Hey, hello. Welcome to CS6263 paper presentation. My name is Raul Zuleta, and today I will be talking to you about EV charging. So I am going to do my best to represent an outstanding work done by Richard Baker and Ivan Martinovic from the University of Oxford, titled Losing the Car Keys, Wireless 5 Layers Insecurities in EV Charging. This was first presented back in 2019 during the Usenix Security Symposium. I will do my best to incarnate the author and by the use of his work, including plots, obviously the paper itself, slides and tables, to tell you what was going on back in 2019 with EVA 5 security. So probably I don't need to tell anyone or try to convince anyone about the importance of EV charging. It is turning into a big thing. So this is the map of Atlanta, and here we can see Georgia Tech actually, and there are a lot of charging stations, normal or traditional AC charging stations, and there are some which are widespread, but they are appearing more often, and we have been seeing how they are being growing in numbers of these orange and pseudo brown dots. So the green ones are just a standard, but the orange ones are the DC high power chargers, and they promise to bring charging times right down, but also to make for a much smarter charging interaction. And that's because power is not really everything here. So it is pretty interesting to see how they are becoming more apparent for the user. They have been there are many studies showing that the user do prefer to go to these fast stations. So let's say, first of all, why would you go there? Why would you go to a specific place and to take a charge? Because that will involve an errand that is probably not necessary if charging is everywhere. Well, power, as I said, is not everything. Power is only one part of the story. What do these smart chargers do provide? First of all, they provide a deeper integration of charging. So these elements do include new technologies that provide a much deeper integration of charging into everyday life. So in this case, you would have reactive charging, namely where the vehicle knows what the price of the electricity is, and it can decide if it is going for a full recharge right now, or maybe just to delay it until it's night. Or you may expect the vehicle to do a full-blown vehicle to grid, where you can, well, actually not you, but the vehicle can give power back to the grid, so you can make some profit out of it. Let's say if you are selling the energy during the peak time and you recharge in the night, if the night is cheaper. It also can be a convenience as you roam around and you don't have all the payment applications, or you don't want to carry all your credit cards or maybe your specific card or payment card to pay in a specific charging brand. So you may just rely on the car ability to identify itself and provide you with a billing that is being done on behalf of you. So all that is underpinned by the communication that happens within the car and the charging station. And there are many things happening. So one thing that I just mentioned is in one, you expect the car to act on behalf of you. Let's say for payments, let's say for asking for services, let's say the car knows that oil change is required, so the car may ask for the service or may demand the service on behalf of you. The good thing is you really don't need to even be aware of that, because the car will ask for it, but you will be charged for that. So the car, the interesting thing is the car will be behaving on you. The other thing is, what about the car connecting to your smart home, where you can access through your car computer, or the car can do request on behalf of you. So there are many things that should be brought into the table before we get deeper and deeper into that kind of applications, and the protocols stay unchanged. We need to secure it earlier. So what I'm presenting here is the experience in terms of choose of options that you have in a smart charging station. So you may imagine that obviously you need to select the right one according to your vehicle, and you then probably you will have a complete set of applications in the future that will depend on what charging station and what connector and all kind of stuff. Until now there are not so many, but each of these standards or each of these connections do provide you with a basic set of application and basic set of functionalities. So we are in the middle of a format war. None of these has been declared the winner, and you need to choose them depending on your car, and the car itself choose the connector that the manufacturer chooses the connector type based on who knows what. So there are 4 major standards in DC charging. Why I'm not speaking about AC charging? AC charging is the same thing that you would obtain by plugging your car into your home plug. There is no benefit and no fast charging in AC. So today we're gonna stay on the DC fast high power chargers. So the other element that these new technologies provide is a much deeper integration with the charger itself. So there are 4 major DC chargers. The CCS back here in the left, namely the combined charging system, and these other 3 that are coming from China, Japan, and it was actually this one was first developed by Nissan. It's a primarily Japanese supercharger. It's pretty common over there. And obviously we also have our friends of Tesla. And these 3 here in blue, they do use CAN bus. CAN bus is a classic communication bus that you have in-car communication that connects your brake system, your steering system, your alternator, power, drivetrain. I already said brakes, but the dashboard, everything is connected through CAN bus. Even your shock absorption system, stabilizers, everything. And the interesting thing here is the signal that CAN bus uses is really quite similar to a digital system. So it is not that high in terms of amplitude. So has been shown not to be so prone to side channel attacks. But today we're not speaking about CAN bus. We're going to speak about combined charging system. Why? Because interesting thing here is they do use PLC communication, and over that they have an IP stack. So the IP stack is pretty interesting for us. That's a thing for sure. So first of all, the CCS system adapts a domestic PLC LAN technology, but for a new use. This was quite interesting for us because it adapts what was originally made for a LAN, a domestic LAN, and it uses a kind of private network mode that will use a key, just like your Wi-Fi network, but instead it is used in a public setting. So the participants here probably they have never met before, and someone needs to provide them with the key to establish the network. So that's the principal thing. It's a shared private key versus the public key. So it's a strange way here. And The amplitude of the, I will show you that later, but the amplitude of the signal is way higher, so it is known to leak signal. More importantly, it's supported by 7 out of the 10 car manufacturers worldwide, so it's really, really, really well deployed. In Europe, it's everywhere. It is, well, underneath there are two important standards. The major one is the ISO 15118. This defines, I'm speaking about this one, the CS220. This defines everything from the physical layer right up to charging loop and the message structures and the exchanging method. And also you have the DIN 70101. Well, what you see deployed at the moment is not really the CCS20, it's the 1.0 version. They do differ in a lot of advanced features and security features. So the version 1 really doesn't have all the advanced features. It will be described just in a few moments. The physical communication on both of them are based on the basic 1.0, meaning that it is always DIN 70121. But the ISO 15118 is composed by way more secure and extended features. So some technical details about PLC and what we were talking about. In the physical layer, they are using the home plug green PHY, which is a form of transmission of PLC that was adapted. In this case, for the car, for this use case, in car charging. On top of that, we have the complete layer of IP and IP stack, and then you have TCP, UDP, and you name it, a host of and several applications that can be used on top of that. So, more importantly, is the amplitude of the signal here is based on pulse width modulation and is resistive signaling. So the least will be 6 volt, and the biggest, let's say the greatest amplitude will be up to 12 volts. So that's music for our ears when speaking about side channels. So let's speak now about the threat model. The threat model presented is a quite simple one. It's a weak passive eavesdropper, but the most important factor is it is a eavesdropper that is acting wirelessly, despite this being an entirely wired system. So the side channel here is a key thing. And these conditions are quite nice for the attacker because they don't need to modify anything, they don't need to look suspicious, or they try to change the charger or interfere with the process. You just need to sit around, either in a car or perhaps in another space, visiting the car park station, or perhaps with the device that you have planted in a much more unobtrusive location. Because all of this, because it's wireless property, you can do it all. So that's the great thing. So why would someone do this? What are you aiming to is to retrieve any private data that is being leaked, being sent, being exchanged. To do what? Well, few things popped in mind. One is, of course, to track people. The underlying PLC technology has in per device MAC address, which is unique, so you can actually track people. You could use this by watching several chargers or to keep track of where the car goes or where it will go. You may monitor an individual house, and just to say, you like to know when people leave by knowing if the car is not there. Just some of the things that comes to my mind of what can be done. Obviously, there are much more interesting stuff, like, for example, observe traffic on the platform, observe the traffic, the internal traffic. For example, some of the chargers have been reported to have SSH or open web management consoles, even Telnet. So also you may observe the traffic from third-party apps, payment applications. Another interesting thing will be auto charge. That means that you remember that we spoke about your car acting on your behalf. Well, here you may, if you observe the right keys, you may You may supplant someone and pay your bill with someone else's account. And this is something which it is deployed a lot in the European countries. It is associated with the Mac, and then their accounts are billed automatically. So the car is, as we already mentioned, is really performing payment actions on behalf of the user. So those are the things that you can do. So later on, so the author went in an experimental campaign, and they went out to the road. They got 3 vehicles, all implementing this interim DIN standard, the one that we just spoke a few moments ago, and they drove around for 800 miles, and they for more than 3 months in time. That they didn't go all in a row. So this was spanned in several weeks, and they collected 54 unique charging sessions. They passed through service station, highway, superstores, or hotels. Let's say a plethora of charging facilities and locations. So let's say that it's a pretty significant and representative sample. Let's go now to the experimental setup. At each site they deployed a software-defined radio that was composed mainly by a laptop, then the SDR card itself, software-defined radio. Then comes the up converter, which is an amplifier, a couple filters, and then you have the antenna. They placed the antenna in various exploratory placements. So as baseline, it was inside the car. Another placement was by the cable, this by the side the park lot, and another by the charging station and behind it. Here you may call it hidden the foliage or clutter in the near. So how it is look, so here you have the SDR, then comes the up converter, which is connected directly to the SDR, in this case the Blade RF, and you have the connection to the computer. So you may place this inside the car itself, the one that is charging, or leave it somewhere near the cable. And they expect that due to the nature of the PLC, it would be a pretty strong signal being leaked. So a realistic attack location would be passing by the vehicle or by the side of it or in an adjacent spot. So what you can see in this example is how it looks. In this case, they were behind the charging station, and this is by the side. And this position proved to be the best one. In this case, they went up to 100%. Maybe 91 to 100% of the signal recovery. So pretty good. They also tried having this procedure being done in couple vehicles at the same time, multiple vehicles. That didn't go that good because the recovered signals went from 24 up to 58%. They still found emissions that where the identity of each car was visible on every run, actually, but the recovery rate was pretty low. So now let's speak about a little bit about the signals in some examples also. This plot at the left, this is right by the cable, so it's pretty good. You can actually see by naked eye the pattern. It's pretty close to what we spoke at the beginning, where you have the 6 volt, and then you have the 9 volts, and then you have the 12 volts amplitude for different things, the pulse width modulation. So you can actually distinct the spectral pattern. This is a distinctive to this particular PLC implementation. This was done at 25 megahertz up to 30, but which is more. This was done like that just to avoid interference with other technologies in the same band. But the interesting thing is this is still apparent even when you locate yourself behind the bay, let's say behind the charger, or the next on the next door So you can most of the times you can observe the nature of the PLC. So the eavesdropping tool was mainly done by the use of SDR. So here you begin with the signal capture. In this case, you have the radio and the amplifiers, as we already spoke about this, to then pass through the PHY RX. And this is all software. This is almost as a standard PLC receiver implementation. Here it is chopped, then resynchronized, fast forwarded, transformed, demodulated, everything. All this is software, and then is directly back to the tool chain, where if the recovery was, if the key was recovered, then you proceed to the decryption. If not, you just throw the raw dump. It is worth mentioning that they had no ground truth access, meaning they did not have any access to the messages, the real messages to compare to. So the ground truth was not available. The only way that they used to actually measure their succeed rate or their recovery rate was using the CRC method, because these things do send a CRC, which is used to later check if they did recover the package correctly or not. So in this case, they relied on CRC 16 and CRC 32. The author mentioned that this setup was far from optimal. However, it was affordable, compact, and flexible enough. Some highlights. Sorry. Pretty important to mention, in some sites, in this case in the next bay, not directly by the cable, but pretty close to the car, 4 meters away, 91%, or let's say barely 92% of recovery. That's pretty high. By the cable, of course, is almost 100%, and in car, pretty close to the logic and to the connector, 100%. Being the lowest, the bay behind, here I'm speaking about one car being connected. We're not trying to connect to the side channel on multiple cars. We're not trying to eavesdrop multiple cars. So this car is just single car. Being the highest position in the car itself, then coming by the cable, which is obvious, but pretty high recovery rates. And many antenna locations, as you can see. The performance varied a lot depending on the location. The closer, the better. Now, the most interesting time to eavesdrop was right at the start of the session, because there are a couple of values that are exchanged here and there, like the vehicle MAC. There are a couple of seconds into the session per vehicle that they begin to exchange keys that will be later used to encrypt the traffic. And they observed a pattern that was stable for months, let's say 3 to be specific, which really underpins the idea on how this could be used as an alternative to customer identification in the auto charge system. And as I just mentioned, the NM key, master key, is delivered in plain text. This one, plain text, at the very beginning of the session. So with that, what can you do? It's quite easy. In effect, the messages are being sent encrypted, but at the very beginning, if you are able to decipher or decode that message, that traffic is being sent home plug AV green PHY, then you will get the key. In this get key confirmation, the key is already sent, so this message, so with that, you can decode the upcoming packets. So what about the other encryption? Well, in the DIN standard, they were looking at no encryption at all. Actually, in this standard, only supports charging traffic, and the charging traffic was not ciphered. It's a matter of your interest or not if you question the importance of having the charging control ciphered or not. So it depends upon you think it is. And now that is the CCS110. The next standard is CCS20, is the ISO 15118, includes a pretty complex security mode. It's purpose-built charging PKI. The TLS is mandatory for many use cases, but there are several drawbacks. I have to mention that PKI that they are trying to reach is still not there. There are also additional security that is provided by the application layer, where the values can be passed on, such as they go into an energy provider, can be used for billing, but this is far from universal. This does really depends on the particular use case, and they vary based on what services you're using, what payment options, in what environment, etc. So that security is not really always implemented. So can this be done with cheap equipment? Yes. They did go with a setup that's worth 1K, but they are way cheaper at about, let's say, $40 that can do mostly the same. Maybe you will have to be closer to the charging station, or it will take longer to decipher the traffic. But surely it can be done. It can be done. It's still an open question whether the same techniques will work effectively for charging communications of current cars. But considering that the car lifespan is well beyond 3 years, probably it will. Now, in conclusions, I think there are a couple of things that are really worth mentioning. First of all, this is an entirely wired system. There were no intentional wireless components dedicated or built inside. However, they were able to catch or sniff on the system in a 100% wireless way. So the system is leaking pretty heavy. Due to this reason, we expect that eavesdropping, these kind of communications, will continue into later standards. The security model is case by case. It's not really something that you can cope with a wide standard. It must be chopped into specific. It's unlikely that someone is going to predict accurately, and right now, all the new scenarios that are going to emerge, especially with this rapid competition of standards that we have been seeing. So probably this leakage will stay for long. Who's going to become dominant? Irrespective of who, there are also a lot of issues on the persistent unique identifiers that are being used for the vehicles, that are being broadcasted every time. And every time you plug your car to the CCA charging, you will be broadcasting your identifiers. And I don't see any immediate change to that in the near future, even though they did inform to all 7 manufacturers seem to be leaking that information. So there's some future work that is proposed. It will be for sure an active attack with the right capabilities. That will be way more complicated, but for sure that will show the capacities to both do something at the car level, as well as to spoof, interfere, or change, or even control the CCA charging procedure at the file layer. Now, what can be done? Speaking about countermeasures, to mitigate the unintended wireless channel, an easy way would be to use chokes or shielding that can be applied to reduce leakage. This will not eliminate it completely, but will help. Another would be to enforce the use of security mechanism in the home plug green PHY, which is nowadays not enforced. And the other, both, they propose several modifications to the Slack initiation protocol to harden it in order to prevent that initial key leakage. Now, and that's also something that probably we didn't pass through, but the Slack here means signal level attenuation characterization, and that was used to adapt the technology to these use cases. Home plug green PHY protocol, the HPGP, was converted to this use case by the incorporation of an initial association protocol, during which the vehicle and the charger verify that they are connected to the right each other, and that was not only crosstalk due to interference of that or something. So meaning that the manufacturer had some idea of potential interference from the medium, from the environment. They really did not thought, or maybe they did, about leaking into the... well, that's it. Thank you for your attention. I hope this presentation made you a bit more informed about our current smart cards and smart chargers. So thank you very much. Goodbye.